The more you let go, the more comes back to you. It sounds impossible, like a trick of language, a riddle wrapped in poetry. And yet, it is one of the oldest truths in nature. Look closely at the world around you, and you will see it everywhere. A tree does not cling desperately to its leaves when autumn arrives. It lets them fall, and in that release, it makes room for new life to grow in spring. The ocean does not hoard its waves. Each one rises, crashes, disappears, and yet the sea never runs dry. Even your own breath is a lesson in this truth. You cannot inhale until you have first let go of what you hold inside. Still, most of us live as though the opposite were true. We grip tightly to things we cannot truly possess. Relationships, achievements, identities, even our own sense of control. We tell ourselves that safety comes from holding on, when in reality, it is this clinging that exhausts us. Imagine trying to grasp water in your fist. The harder you squeeze, the faster it slips away. What if life itself works in exactly the same way? Here lies the paradox. The illusion of control feels safe, but it is actually the source of our suffering. The more we try to command and dominate the flow of life, the more anxious, restless, and divided we become. But the moment we loosen our grip, the moment we stop trying to force the river to flow in straight lines, we discover a deeper current carrying us, one we were too busy resisting to notice. Think of a river at dawn, its surface glowing with the first light of day. It does not fight against the rocks in its path. It bends around them. It does not argue with gravity. It simply follows it. It moves with such quiet power that, given enough time, even the hardest stone is worn smooth. Nature whispers this lesson constantly. Power lies not in control, but in alignment. So let us begin here with a question that may feel unsettling, but necessary. What happens when we stop gripping so tightly? What happens when we allow ourselves to be carried by the very thing we fear to trust? The answer may reveal not only the truth of life itself, but also the most dangerous illusion you still believe. The illusion that you are in control. A farmer once gave his helper what seemed like a simple job. Take these potatoes and sort them into 3 piles, small, medium, and large. The helper thought it would be easy, but as the hours passed, he found himself paralyzed. Each potato demanded a decision, too big for the small pile, but not quite big enough for the large. Was it medium, or was it just a slightly larger small? By the end of the day, the helper slammed down the last potato and quit on the spot. He hadn't been broken by back-breaking labor. He had been defeated by endless little choices, the constant demand to decide, control, and categorize. The weight was not in the potatoes. The weight was in the illusion of control. If you've ever stood in front of your closet in the morning, staring at clothes you've worn 100 times and thinking, "I have nothing to wear," you know this feeling. It isn't that you lack options. It's that your mind is drowning in choices, trying to control every possible outcome. Should I wear this? Will people think that? What if it's too much? What if it's not enough? By the time you finally step out the door, the day already feels heavier. Or think about a man planning the perfect vacation. He spends weeks making sure every detail is flawless. The flights, the hotels, the meals, the activities. He leaves nothing to chance. But when the trip begins, he is restless, anxious, and irritable. If the plane is delayed by even half an hour, his entire sense of control crumbles. He set out to create joy, but instead created a prison of expectations. Haven't we all done this? We try to master the uncontrollable, and in doing so, we rob ourselves of the very freedom we were seeking. Life, in its raw form, does not demand this level of control. The river flows whether or not you approve of its direction. The sun rises without asking for your permission. The heart beats without you needing to command it. But the mind, clever, restless, proud, keeps whispering, "You are the master of all this. If you don't decide, everything will fall apart." And so, like the potato sorter, we exhaust ourselves not from living, but from trying to control the living. We don't collapse from the weight of reality. We collapse from the illusion of control. What the potato sorter discovered, and what we all eventually discover, is that the real drain on our lives is not the work itself, but the constant strain of believing we must control every detail. The mind insists on sorting every moment, every outcome, every possibility into neat categories of good or bad, success or failure. And like the helper who walked away from the farm in despair, we too burn out, not because life is unlivable, but because we try to live it as if we were its managers. This is where Alan Watts draws our attention to a profound truth. Control is the greatest illusion we still believe. We imagine ourselves as little monarchs of our worlds, clutching at people, possessions, and plans, thinking, "If I don't hold on, everything will fall apart." But nature has been showing us something very different all along. The river does not force its way to the sea, and yet it always arrives. The seasons do not argue with time, and yet they keep their rhythm more faithfully than any human schedule. Your breath itself does not require your command. It enters and leaves in its own time. This is not weakness, it is wisdom. Nature moves without needing to grip. It flows because it trusts. The tighter we grip, the less we hold. The irony is almost cruel. In chasing control, we create the very suffering we were trying to avoid. Anxiety blooms, relationships strain, and the joy of the present moment is stolen. But when we finally loosen that grip, when we allow life to flow as it does, something unexpected happens. We discover relief. We discover energy returning. We discover that the world has been carrying us all along. The illusion of control is seductive because it promises safety. But real safety is not found in domination. It is found in trust. To let go is not to lose. It is to step into alignment with the current of life, which has always been moving toward its destination, with or without your permission. Life offers us a fork in the road. On one path, we continue clinging to control. On the other, we step into trust. Both are available at every moment, but the destinations could not be more different. The first path is familiar, the path of control. It is paved with anxiety, lined with burnout, and haunted by the quiet fear that everything could collapse if we loosen our grip. When you walk this road, you are like a monarch ruling over a fragile kingdom. You sit on your throne, issuing commands. But the subjects, your relationships, your health, your opportunities, are restless, never fully obeying. To keep your crown secure, you work harder, push stronger, demand more. But the irony is this: the tighter your grip, the weaker your rule. The kingdom shrinks until you are left defending a crumbling fortress, exhausted and alone. Now look to the other path, the path of trust. It is not passive, nor is it careless. It is a recognition that cooperation, not domination, sustains life. Here, the metaphor shifts from monarchy to ecosystem. In a forest, no single tree dictates the rules. Power is shared, roots intertwine, rivers nourish, sunlight is divided fairly among branches. Nothing hoards, nothing commands, yet everything flourishes. The forest thrives not because one element controls the rest, but because all elements move in rhythm together. Alan Watts would often remind us, shared power nourishes all things without dominating anything. When you begin to trust, life begins to resemble that forest. Help appears in unexpected ways. Strangers lend a hand. Doors open without your forcing them. People arrive in your life at the precise moment you need them. Not because you orchestrated it, but because you allowed yourself to flow into alignment with what was already unfolding. Think of the difference. On the path of control, you wake each day asking, "How can I bend life to my will?" On the path of trust, you wake asking, "How will life surprise me today?" The first question breeds tension, because life will never perfectly obey. The second question invites curiosity, because life is always more imaginative than your plans. So here is the choice before us. Will you live as a lonely monarch, forever defending a fragile illusion? Or will you live as part of the forest, nourished, supported, and free? The path of control isolates. The path of trust connects. And though the forest does not belong to any single tree, each tree belongs to the forest. If the illusion of control is the trap, then what is the way out? Surprisingly, it is not greater certainty. It is not the clever strategy or the airtight plan. The doorway to freedom is far stranger, far more unsettling. I don't know. We've been taught to treat those words as weakness, to say, "I don't know," in school, in business, even in our personal lives, feels like failure. We want answers, authority, and mastery. Yet Watts suggests the opposite, that admitting not knowing is not a loss of power, but the beginning of wisdom. Think of light. Light fills the room, illuminates every corner. But can it shine on itself? A blade can cut through wood or bone, but can it cut itself? You can bite an apple, but can you bite your own teeth? There are limits to what something can do to itself, and consciousness is no different. You can observe the world, but you cannot fully observe the one who observes. The I who tries to control everything can never quite get hold of itself. And here's the mystery. Instead of this being a problem, it is actually the key. When you stop insisting on pinning down the self, when you allow "I don't know" to live in you, you open to the vastness of life itself. Suddenly, uncertainty is not an enemy. It is an invitation. What I really want is tied to what you want. And what you want? I don't know. Surprise me. That's the dance. Life is not a script with every line pre-written. It is jazz, improvisation, a constant unfolding. The beauty lies in not knowing what the next note will be. Children understand this instinctively. Watch them play. They do not begin the game by demanding a guarantee of outcome. They say, "Let's see what happens," and leap in. Somewhere along the road to adulthood, we lose this trust. We begin trading the joy of discovery for the armor of certainty. But the armor grows heavy, and soon it is the very thing keeping us from moving freely. To say, "I don't know," is to set that armor down. It is to walk naked into the mystery, vulnerable but free. It is to discover that not knowing does not mean being lost. It means being open. So the question turns, what if the most dangerous illusion is not only that you are in control, but also that you must be? What if your liberation lies not in solving life, but in letting it remain unsolved? We began with a paradox. The more you let go, the more comes back to you. At first, it sounded impossible, maybe even naive, but now you can see it, not as wishful thinking, but as the pattern of life itself. The trees let go of their leaves, and in time, new life blooms. The ocean releases each wave, only to rise again. You exhale, and only then can the next breath enter. Control always promised safety. It promised certainty. But what it actually delivered was tension, exhaustion, and fear. The more tightly you gripped, the more fragile everything became. And yet, the moment you opened your hand, the moment you allowed life to move as it does, you discovered something startling. You were being carried all along. Decay, impermanence, and uncertainty, the very things we fear, are not enemies. They are the great allies of renewal. Without endings, there can be no beginnings. Without uncertainty, there can be no discovery. Without release, there can be no return. What we call loss is often life's way of clearing the soil for something unexpected to grow. Alan Watts often reminded us that the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. This is not resignation, it is participation. It is to live not as the one clutching the riverbank, but as the one flowing with the current. So let the river carry you. Trust the tide. You do not need to force the waves into order. The ocean already knows its rhythm. You do not need to control the seasons. The earth already knows its turning. And you do not need to grip so tightly to life, because life is already holding you. Here is the invitation. Loosen your grip. Trust the mystery. Allow yourself to be surprised, because what is yours will arrive in its own season, not a moment too soon, not a moment too late. And when it does, you will be ready, not because you conquered life, but because you finally opened your hands.